Abovan's tips, Abovan's tips. It's time for one of Abovan's tips for Final Fantasy XIV. Protecting your game settings. Has this happened to you?
Oh, yes, this UI is scrumptious. I can take the minimap and move it here. Much easier to see. The hotbars, yes, I can make them big and small and big and small. And then the gauge, yes, the meter gauge. It's so much easier to see now. This is the greatest UI I've ever created. Finally, my wife will love me. My kids will respect me. Life is Huh? Oh, no. What's happening? I didn't save the UI! Oh no! I didn't save the UI! Take me, not the UI! Ah!
So, we don't want that happening to us. We want to protect the time and energy that we put into our user interface and other game settings. Your user interface and game settings are an important part of your Final Fantasy XIV experience. Your game audio and video settings, your user interface, and even your character's gear sets and macros are all stored locally on your PC or console. If there's any sort of disaster, all of these settings will be lost and you'll have to start from scratch to create your user interface, set your game settings, and reset all of your gear sets and macros. For the console players on the PlayStation 4 or 5, there is some protection if you are a PlayStation Plus subscriber, since one of the features of PS Plus is cloud saves. Your save data is protected inside of the PlayStation Network infrastructure. But since PlayStation Plus is not actually required to play Final Fantasy XIV, let's go over a few of the ways that you can protect your settings on either the console or the PC edition of Final Fantasy XIV. Your game settings are stored locally on your PC inside your local profile, usually C:\users, \your username, \documents, \my games, \Final Fantasy XIV, a Realm Reborn. Inside of that folder are all of your client settings, character settings, and screenshots that you have taken within the game. This is the data that we need to protect, and we have a few ways to do so, in which we will go over here. If you are a Mac user, I believe the path to your character data is in Macintosh HD /users /your username /documents /my games /Final Fantasy XIV, a Realm Reborn. If you are a Mac user, please comment down below to confirm or to correct this. We will be going over 4 methods to protect your game settings. Backing up and restoring from the launcher to a file for the PC players, backing up and restoring the game settings on the PS4 and PS5, backing up and restoring the game settings from within the character select screen, finally, using OneDrive to automatically protect your game settings. Our first method is to use the game launcher for the PC and Mac players. In the top right corner, we have the gear icon, which will take us into the launcher settings. On this screen, we can scroll down a bit to the advanced settings, and we have the backup tool. Clicking on the backup button, we can see that it provides us a way to back up to a file or restore from a file. Clicking on backup will take our settings, dump them to a file, and then we can save that file to any location on our computer. To protect yourself, place this file on some external cloud storage, such as a USB drive, some cloud storage, or maybe some other drive on your computer. Here, we have an example of our user interface before we took our backup. So we took a backup of our settings. Now we can go ahead and mess up our user interface so that we can restore it back to what it was when we took our backup. To restore, simply hit the restore button and point it to the backup file you previously created in the backup process. There is a do not overwrite older data checkbox. You'll want to uncheck this if you made a major change to your settings, realized it's not what you really wanted, and just wanted to roll back to the settings that you've changed, like a hotbar layout. After the restore, we can now see that our UI is restored back to the way it was at the time of the backup before we went ahead and messed it up. On the PlayStation 4 or 5 console, using PlayStation Plus is the most automated method of protecting your config data. Final Fantasy XIV is an online-only game, so having connection to the PlayStation Network is normally not an issue. But there are cases where PlayStation Plus is not needed, such as if Final Fantasy XIV is the only game you wish to play on the console. If that is the case, then having a way to protect your config data may be of value. My example console is a PlayStation 5, but I will show you what you can do with the PlayStation 4 client as well as the PlayStation 5 client. Before we begin, we will need a USB drive plugged into your PlayStation console. This should be a standard USB drive and not one that is formatted as an external storage unit to store your games. If you use a USB drive to transfer pictures and videos from your console to your PC, then that will work just fine. On your console, go into your settings and then select Saved Data and Game/App Settings. Your PlayStation 5 consoles will have an extra step where you need to specify which game types you want to work with. We are going to be doing the PlayStation 4 ones first. Select Save Data PS4 and then Console Storage. After a moment, it will display the PS4 games on your console. Select Final Fantasy XIV and then select Copy to send them to your USB drive. This will send all the game configuration data as well as all your characters configuration. If you only want to back up some characters, that is an option as well. The config files are not that large though, so it may be easier just to send all of them to the USB drive for safekeeping. At this point, your data is backed up as of the time of this backup. If you do not have an automated system like PlayStation Plus, you will need to do this periodically to keep an up-to-date copy of your game settings. When it comes time to restore, we can do that from the same Save Data in Game/App Settings menu. From that screen, select Save Data PS4, but this time select USB drive. Again, make sure your USB drive is inserted into the console's USB port before doing this step. Once the console inventories the USB drive and checks to make sure that there is enough space on the console, you can then select Final Fantasy XIV and then select Copy to send the data back to the console for the restore. If you have saved data that you are overwriting, you will need to confirm this for each console config file and character config. If you want to overwrite it all, select the Apply to All checkbox and then click Yes to start the restore. After a few moments, your console settings and character settings will be back to where they were as of the time of the last backup. At the time of this video's writing, PlayStation 5 games cannot be individually backed up to an attached USB device, only to PlayStation Plus cloud storage, which requires a PlayStation Plus subscription. There is another method though. You can back up your entire PlayStation 5. You may need a relatively larger USB disk to house the entire backup. A stock PS5 will come with a 825 gig SSD with about 700 gigs available for games and user content. So make sure that your USB disk has enough free space to store this data. If you added a second SSD to the second M.2 slot, you will need to figure in that space as well. The backup and restore process is documented from Sony at the link below. This link can also be found in the description. These backups will only contain games not on the M.2 drive, such as on an external USB device, game save data, user screenshots, videos, and the PlayStation 5 settings. What is not protected are the actual games on the M.2 drive and your trophy data. The games on the M.2 drive you will need to re-download after the restore. The trophies will need to be synced up prior to the backup so that you can resync it to the PlayStation 5 servers after the restore. The PlayStation 5 restore process is a full system format and then a restore of the protected data. All PS5 games stored on the M.2 drive will need to be re-downloaded. Let's look at the interface on how to back up and restore the PlayStation 5. To back up the PS5, connect your USB drive directly into a USB port on the PlayStation 5. Do not connect it through a USB hub. Select Settings from the main menu. In Settings, select System, then Backup and Restore, and finally back up your PS5. Select your USB drive if you have multiple USB drives connected. Select what data that you want protected. You want to at least hit Save Data in order to protect your Final Fantasy XIV settings. Select Backup to start the backup process. This may take a good amount of time depending on what data that you selected to back up. When completed, the backup complete screen will appear. Your PlayStation 5 will reboot at this point to back up the rest of the data. Afterwards, the PlayStation will reboot back into normal mode. When it comes time to restore, make sure that your PlayStation 5 has the same software version or higher than what the backup was from. Once you confirmed your version number, plug in your USB disk into the PlayStation again. Go to Settings, System Software, Backup Restore, but this time select Restore PS5 from the menu. Select the data that you wish to restore, confirm that you do indeed want to do the restore, then the PlayStation will reboot and begin its restore. Part of this restore is a complete format of the PlayStation back to its factory settings. Then, it will restore the data from the USB drive. Once it comes back online, you will need to re-download any PS5 games or other PS4 games that were not protected. Another method that we can use to protect our settings is done at the character select screen. Using this method, we can back up our game settings and character settings individually stored on the game servers. Furthermore, non-platform specific settings can be exported and imported to the opposite platform, meaning if you play on both PCs and consoles, you can design the UI on the PC and import it into the console. Let's talk about how to do this. From the character select screen, we have a few buttons on the upper right side. The gear icon. Next to the new character button is the client settings backup. Whenever you click on this icon, a prompt does show up saying that they still recommend a local backup from the launcher just in case any errors occur. Click on the proceed button to clear this prompt. On the client settings backup screen, we have the ability to upload, download, and restore. The upload button sends a backup to the Square Enix servers. Download will download and apply the most recent backup of the client settings. And the restore button will let you pick from a list of recent backups. This is useful if you have a problem with one of the backups and you need to roll it back to a previous copy. To back up either of these settings, simply click on the upload button. It confirms with you that it will overwrite the previous backup if there's already one there. Also, you can only back up your settings once every 23 hours. The client settings and the character settings are backed up separately, so remember to do both if you want to get a complete backup. To restore, simply click on the download button on the respective screen. You will need to do both the client settings and character settings separately. Also remember that if you have multiple characters, you will need to select each character and download their settings as well. This backup and restore process also works cross-platform, meaning you can create a backup on your PC and restore it to your PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 5, and vice versa. All of these procedures require a manual process for you to initiate the data protection. Using OneDrive or another cloud caching program such as Google Drive, you can take your game settings folder and sync it up to the cloud. Any changes made to these settings will automatically be uploaded up to the cloud, so you never have to make any manual backups, unless of course you want that point-in-time snapshot. Our example will use the personal edition of OneDrive. This will work similar to how PlayStation Plus works, where it automatically syncs up with the servers upon any changes. The free version of OneDrive comes with 5 gigs of data. The Final Fantasy XIV settings folder is normally under 100 megs without any screenshots. As long as you exclude those screenshots, the free version of OneDrive has more than enough space to store all of your Final Fantasy XIV settings. Again, on Windows, the default location for your game settings is stored on c:\users /your username /documents /my games /Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn. Windows 10 and 11 users have a lot of OneDrive integration built right into the OS. If you log into Windows with a Microsoft account, you may have already have this set up and not even know it. To check, look for the OneDrive icon in your system tray. It's an icon that looks like this. Click on it, and then click on the gear icon in the corner to open up the menu, then Settings. Click on the Account tab, and then click on Choose Folders button to see what's being protected. Your Documents folder may already be synced, which would include your Final Fantasy XIV settings. If you see your documents checked, you're good to go. If you don't want the entirety of your documents synced though, you can drill further down and select just your Final Fantasy XIV folder that is located within the My Games folder in Documents. Once that is all set, then you're good to go. Now, all of your Final Fantasy XIV data will be protected in OneDrive automatically. Furthermore, if you play on multiple computers, such as a desktop at home and a laptop when you're on the go, the two will be synced together provided that you use the same OneDrive account for both. Lastly, if there is a disaster such as hardware failure, or you just decide to get a new computer, all you have to do is to set up OneDrive on the new machine, and all of your Final Fantasy XIV settings will become available. Once again, thank you for watching. If this tip was helpful to you, please click on that like button and subscribe to see more of my Final Fantasy XIV tips. Special thanks to my buddy Coltrane for doing the totally excellent voiceover at the top of the video. Thanks again, and I'll see you at the next Final Fantasy XIV tip.